What's up, guys, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions to get into this week, and the first one's going to be from Tony Schmidt, who says, can you explain why Baker is the QB of the future when he's only had one good season so far? So we're starting with this. And if you count the first season as good, then why was his second season so bad, and how do we know he won't be inconsistent in the future? Now, I just use this question, to be honest with you, as a segue to just briefly give my thoughts on the latest Browns trade controversy, whatever's going on Twitter at the moment, right? And the last thing I heard, it was something about the Browns Aaron Rodgers trade. Look, no, it's not happening, and no, I'm not going to sit here and make an impassioned plea for the Browns not to do it or tell you why the Browns should not make that trade or why Baker is my guy or anything like that, simply because when it comes to this conversation, especially when it comes to being around the whole Aaron Rodgers trade discussion, it's irrelevant. It is a waste of mental energy, right? There is no plausible way that trade's ever going to happen, nor does it seem like either side is interested. This is a purely hypothetical thing that people are bringing up just so people can argue about it on the internet. It is stupid. It is ridiculous. It is dumb. It's bait. Right? So no, I'm not going to do a 6-part series or something like that explaining on why the Browns would or would not do it, because again, just pondering this question is a waste of mental energy. The Browns are not trading Baker Mayfield, and they're not trading him for Aaron Rodgers, nor are the Green Bay Packers trading Aaron Rodgers for Baker Mayfield. There are a million ways and reasons that won't happen. I don't need to explain them. They're inherently obvious. So, no, I'm not going to spend a ton of mental energy on that. And I implore you guys to just stop spending a ton of mental energy on these hypothetical rumors, right? Odell trade rumors, Baker trade rumors. They're not real. They're not from the source. Josina Anderson is not giving them any air, so you know it's not real. So any conversation, any heated debate or 14-hour Twitter thread is kind of just a waste of energy at this point. There are better things to do. The sun is starting to come out. Let's spend our time a little better than that. Now, as far as this gentleman's question about why are people convinced that Baker Mayfield is good, one, yeah, the first 2 years, well, not the first 2 years, but the first year was really good and the third year was really good. Now, 2 out of 3 seasons, which suggests that he might be really good. Also, to your question about why was the second year bad, I mean, did you watch 2019? Like, honestly, it's not hard to see. And I'm sorry if I'm coming off rough or rude or irritated by the tone of the way I'm answering this question. But, I think it is necessary right now, because I think there are obvious answers to the questions that you are asking if you actually put in a little energy to look for those answers. So I'm not going to be answering this question with kid gloves, quite frankly. So yeah, if you saw 2019, if you watched the 2019 season, there was a coach here who decided it was a good thing to do, to go from 3rd and 9 from a halfback draw play, right? Todd Monken was arguing with the head coach. The head coach was extremely underqualified. There are a million reasons why 2019 went the way that 2019 did. And obviously, once you got rid of some of those factors and some of those things in the offense, it went away. This is not rocket science, right? Somebody who does videos on this platform, Brett Coleman, did an excellent video called The Ballad of Baker Mayfield in 2019, explaining how the Browns completely misused Baker Mayfield in 2019 and how he could be righted for the future. And the Browns did those things, and Baker Mayfield was right. So the question isn't one good season, one bad season, one good season. How do we know if he's ever going to be consistent, right? And we can ask that hypothetical question with anything when it comes to football. How do we know Aaron Rodgers is going to be good at 39? How do we know that Tom Brady's going to come back and play well? How do we know that Lamar Jackson's going to be able to run the offense? How do we know that Patrick Mahomes is going to be the same guy from year to year? It's because when a guy plays well, there's a level of faith that you have that he's going to continue to play well. Baker Mayfield had 2 good seasons when the Browns used him the right way. He had 1 bad season when the Browns just were completely incompetent with the way they used him. So the math would suggest the obvious answer is if the Browns use Baker Mayfield correctly, he's pretty good. And that is, in fact, why people are convinced, not that Baker Mayfield's going to win the MVP or anything like that, but that Baker Mayfield is at least good enough to win a Super Bowl with. And good enough to win a Super Bowl with generally means probably top 15 quarterback. And I would be hard-pressed to name 15 quarterbacks who are better than Baker Mayfield. So to answer your question on why people are convinced that Baker Mayfield is a good quarterback, it's because there are things and patterns that would suggest that if you use Baker Mayfield in the way that he is currently being used, he is in fact a really good quarterback. And the fact that his numbers were good when they used him in a play action heavy system in his rookie year, and then really good in his third year, almost like he improved in the second year, but he didn't, but he had a jump from year 1 to year 3 when he was back in that kind of a system, would suggest that if you put Baker Mayfield in the proper system with the proper context, with some competent coaching, hey, pretty good quarterback. So that is why, again, if you want to look at this completely abstract without any context whatsoever, you can always talk yourself out of a good player. People do it all the time. Teams do it all the time. Teams talk themselves out of Ray Lewis. Teams talk themselves out of Lamar Jackson. Teams talk themselves out of good players all the time. And fans do the same thing as well. You know, Atlanta Falcon fans definitely talk themselves out of Brett Favre at some point. You see how that one went. So, yeah, you can continue to try to talk yourself out of this one. But there is real football reasons and real just logical reasons. If you look at the context of all the situations surrounding Baker Mayfield's good 2 years in his bad 1 year, that would suggest, hey, you know, this is pretty simple math that the Cleveland Browns are doing. So that is the answer to that question. That is my answer for any Baker Mayfield trade rumor that comes up during the offseason. So if anything new comes up, if the Browns are going to try to trade Baker Mayfield for Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or whoever it is that comes up in the next rumor mill, I'm not going to make a video about it, but you can refer to this question, refer to this answer I gave in this question as the permanent answer for the rest of the 2021 offseason about any questions regarding the quarterback. Now that we got that out the way, let's jump to the other questions. This one comes from RTR, who says, thoughts on no edge being added in the draft. Clowney gets hurt or Tack. It's either Tack or Augustin who have to start opposite of Miles. Yes, this is obviously the gamble that the Browns are playing with right now. Am I upset that they didn't add an edge in the draft? Not really, because after a certain point with this edge class, which I think is really strong from the end of round 1 and the start and probably to the end of round 2, I did not think outside of that there were a ton of guys that I liked. So if you ran out of guys that you like, right, and they all went, then you probably shouldn't draft the edge you don't like just for the sake of drafting an edge. And I think that's the situation the Browns found themselves in, right? Second round was probably the round they were going to go with the edge. And, you know, Peyton Turner was gone. Azeez Ojulari was gone. But Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was there, so you can't pass up on that one. So, you know, you did not get an edge, but you got Owusu-Koramoah. But this is the gamble you're playing with. Jadeveon Clowney, make no jokes about it, he is injury prone. So you are running the risk of putting Miles in a situation where he doesn't have a ton of help. Now, the good news in this situation is that Myles Garrett is, in fact, on the other side. And as long as Myles Garrett is on the other side, if coverage holds up, that will be enough to get to the quarterback, because Myles Garrett is probably one of the top 5 defensive players in all of football. But yes, it is a gamble. They did not get an edge in the draft, and that is a little concerning, especially when you look to what the Browns are going to have to do next year at the edge rush position. So they're going to have to answer some questions after this year, and hopefully not during this year, but it is definitely possible to do. I think that is a great thing to bring up, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do if that situation does arise, because that is a hole on the roster if things don't go to plan there. The next question comes from Josiah Covers Sports, who says, could the Browns sign Melvin Ingram, and is Olivier Vernon open to returning to the Browns? being the Browns drafted Schwartz in the third. What does that mean for Higgins and Peoples-Jones? I don't think it means much for Higgins and Peoples-Jones. They play different positions. I know they play wide receiver, but Schwartz is a X receiver, which means he's a speedster. He's kind of playing that role. Higgins is a slot and a sometimes Z, and Peoples-Jones is a definite Z receiver. So I don't think they're really competing for the same spots on the team. Now, as far as your question about Melvin Ingram or Olivier Vernon won't probably play this season. He tore his Achilles in the middle of the year, so I don't think he's playing this season. Melvin Ingram, I'm good on that. He's old enough to be just as injury prone as Clowney, and he'll probably be expensive. You spent enough money this offseason, and you're just going to have to roll the dice there, right? I think that's a better dice roll, Clowney, than Melvin Ingram. But, I don't think you go overboard and sign so many veterans that you end up not seeing what you can get out of Takk McKinley. So, I would be good on that front. The next question comes from Tom Key, who says, in your opinion, will JOK be a day one starter or at least play the majority of defensive snaps? Absolutely, because I don't see who's going to be able to be versatile enough and be a 3-down player better than JOK on the roster. Even though I like Malcolm Smith's not the greatest run defender in the world. Even though I like Sione Takitaki, he's a terrible coverage linebacker. So those are not 3-down guys. Those are guys who will be in perfect rotation with each other when it comes to the downs. Anthony Walker is going to play a ton of snaps, but I also think JOK will as well. Then the next question comes from Burke Family, who says, who do you think is going to have the best year offensively and defensively, and who will be the best rookie from just the Browns and throughout the league? Best rookie throughout the league, Devonta Smith. I really believe in him. I think he's going to have a strong... Oh, hold on, wait. He's playing for the Eagles. That changes this. Kyle Pitts will be the best rookie in the NFL. Best rookie for the Browns, JOK. Thank you for the question. Next question comes from Ben H., who says, how much do you think the scheduling that will come out next Wednesday, I think it's like May 14th or something like that, could affect the Browns' record? And what would the best and worst case scenario be to see when it releases? Honestly, I don't think there's really a best or worst case scenario. We already know the Browns are going to get the extra home game with the 17th game. That would have been the worst case scenario. And quite honestly, when you talk about good teams should not have more than one scheduled loss, right? You get a scheduled loss here or there. And really, when you're talking about scheduled losses, they're about things that happened last year, right? Where you're like playing on a Tuesday or like after 3 days rest or without all of your players. Like those are scheduled losses that happen. In the NFL, though, you get enough time in between games. You don't really, even if you play a back-to-back road trip, you're coming back home in between then. So I don't think the scheduling really matters that much. And also remember, however tough you think the schedule is going to be in the preseason period is never what the schedule is actually going to be, right? Teams can have drastic fall-offs or drastic hike-ups. So, you never know really what the schedule is going to be until the end of the season, and that's when that information is pretty useless. So take the scheduling and what schedule with a grain of salt there. What I'm more excited to see with the schedule coming out is what games will be prime time and when those things are going to happen, just so I can schedule those live streams that are going to happen during the year. Next question comes from Michael, who says, personally, I don't think Lamar Jackson, even with the addition at wide receiver, will have a good passing attack against us. I think their only shot would be dominating the ground with their run game. Do you think our defense can keep up with the many ways they run the ball? Now, do I think the defense can keep up as far as like shutting them down? No. Do I think the defense can do enough to get a couple of stops here and there that can let the offense get the lead? Yes, I do. I think the Browns defense right now on paper, and we got to see how this goes on the field, have enough to be able to force any offense that they play to punt enough to win the game. I think that is the big thing. That's the most important thing. Can the defense get off the field enough to help the offense win the game? I don't think you're going to be asking this defense to win you games. That would be a bonus if it could happen, but I don't think that's what the Browns are going to be asking. Hey, you got the top 5 offense. Now you need a defense that can just get off the field versus anybody, and I do think the Browns have that. Next question is from My guy MX, because I don't know how to say the rest of that name. Are you concerned about JOK's heart condition, or do you believe it's one of those draft scare tactics to make teams talk themselves out of drafting a great player? Look, I don't even think you need the scare tactics to make teams talk themselves out of great players. They do it all the time. I talked about it earlier. But you know, the JOK heart condition, you just have to take his word with it and his physician's word with it. They say it's no big deal. It's no big deal then. If he's cleared to play, he's cleared to play. Those heart conditions can be all over the place. I know for a fact, because I am somebody who has had a heart condition and had problems being cleared to play certain sports or certain activities because of the heart conditions. And I know for a fact that it's complicated. Every single one is not the same. And there are other, supplemental, side effects of a heart condition that can affect somebody's ability to play. So without knowing all the information that surrounds JOK, and again, we should not know all that information unless JOK wants us to know that information, then it's impossible to predict whether this is going to be a big deal. But if his physician and JOK think that this is not really a big deal, you have to go by the word of that, because those are really the only two people who have that amount of information to make a real judgment on this. Everybody else is just guessing. So as somebody who is a lifelong heart patient, I was born with a heart disease. That is my best advice for fans when they're worrying about this whole thing. Just, if the physician and JOK are fine with it, then it's okay. Everything else outside of that, all the speculation outside of that, it's kind of mind your business territory. And the last question of the day comes from Soul Train, who says, what players entering their second or third season do you expect to improve the most? Who is the most risk of losing their job? Mac Wilson, most risk of losing his job. Second and third year player I expect to step up the most, I'm going to say Donovan Peoples-Jones, Taki, and maybe Jacob Phillips steps up. I think Taki and Jacob Phillips needed a real veteran presence in that linebacking room. They're getting it now with Anthony Walker. I think they'll be very helpful and make a couple of plays here or there. And I think Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think he's primed to make a huge step in this offense, because he's the kind of guy that the Browns have a ton of use for at wide receiver. Also a dark horse, Harrison Bryant. I know he had an up and down rookie year, but I think there's a lot of promise there. And I think just once he gets those rookie jitters out and gets used to being an NFL player, he's going to be a really good one. But that's my thoughts about this week's questions. Thank you guys for asking them. And again, guys, have a great day. Have a good night.